each distinctive style, there is a height of excellence. In this special edition, we'll look at 3 of the homes chosen by House Beautiful magazine to represent the best style of living.
In its 103-year history, House Beautiful has really learned that style is all about having a personal view. Although those views are often very different, it's the passion and the perfection which the homeowner brings to the project that make them at home in House Beautiful's best of the best.
Here in San Francisco, high atop Nob Hill, sits Grace Cathedral in all its 20th century Gothic splendor. Across the street is an equally striking building, only a dozen years younger, an apartment house constructed in the highly symmetrical, ornately carved American Beaux-Arts style of the 1920s. Behind one of these billowing balconies is an elegant apartment filled with an eclectic mix of antiques from Europe and Asia. All this in less than 1,000 square feet. Paul Wiseman, an interior designer, discovered this one-bedroom apartment 11 years ago.
When I walked into this oval living room, I was totally enamored, and I said to the friend who was showing me the apartment, I said, "Oh dear, excuse me, I have to live here."
The oval view of the city is breathtaking.
Why should I live anywhere else when I have Europe out this window, New York out that window, and San Francisco out that window? And it really seems that way because of the Gothic architecture from the Grace Cathedral on one side of the apartment, and the Mark Hopkins and the Fairmont, and very much like a Manhattan landscape, and then out to Coit Tower and beyond.
To that geographic medley, add a strong Asian influence inside the apartment.
The screen is Japanese, it's 18th century. It's actually a fragment. The samurai warriors often painted their falcons to show off what the birds they had. And I'm very fond of it because of the gilding and the simplicity of the composition.
Yet most of the gilded furnishings here are early 19th century European, the era of Napoleon and revolutionary political and artistic change.
This piece is the most important piece in my collection. It's called a Secrétaire Habitant, and it's actually a very strong political statement. What was happening that the French got rid of their king, and so the furniture was actually simplified. This is definitely a museum piece. Historically, museums tend to like transitional pieces. As a collector, I do too, because they tell a lot about the tension of when styles were about to change.
The Italian chairs across the room are from the same transitional period.
These chairs are also very important. I just recently purchased them. They're from Lucca, and Napoleon's sister settled in Lucca, and she has a very big style setter. The fact that they're painted makes them much more relaxed and charming. The French tended to do everything a little too formal, so the Italians always sort of twisted it a bit and made it a little more homey.
The Italian tables here are also particularly graceful.
These are 2 of my favorite pieces. What makes it interesting to me is the way it touches the floor. So when a piece of furniture hits the floor lightly, that's how I always look for my furniture. It has to almost dance.
The dining room just beyond has antique chairs with the same delicate legs. The beautifully finished table from a later era was specifically designed to match these chairs. The gilded chandelier above the table has an illuminating history.
The gilding on it is what's called fire gilding. It was mercury and gold mixed together. People inhaled mercury fumes and it drove them quite mad. So it's a type of gilding that you can no longer get.
There's little gilding on this fruitwood chest from the Napoleonic era.
You can see the classical detailing here of the column. You could often tell what was going on politically in the world by the furniture. There was always some political reference. Napoleon wanted to be grand as the emperors of Rome, and so he put columns everywhere to remind people of that.
The ceiling above this Napoleonic stateliness is part of the original room, but the dramatic mirrored double doors are entirely Paul's invention.
I like to say this goes to the ballroom that we're not using, but the reality is there's just a window back there that looks into the building next door. So I built these in to give the illusion of more space.
Past the magnificent dining room is a kitchen with no pretensions whatsoever.
Here we have one of the world's smallest kitchens. I love to cook, and again, efficiency is very important to make it all happen in a small apartment.
But there is space for a collection of objects shaped like pears.
I've been told I'm the only decorator in San Francisco that can drive a tractor and a 10-wheel truck. I grew up on a pear farm, and my family still grows pears. They grow Anjous and Comices and Bartletts. And so I've been collecting pears all my life, and some of these have gotten quite interesting. This one here is a 19th century tea caddy. In the 19th century, tea was very valuable, so you often locked it to keep your servants out of the tea. This is a witching ball that you would hang in your window to keep witches away, in a pear-shaped, the reflection of the light. I even have a chocolate mold that's a pear. This is kind of fun. This is from the 19th century. You would make your chocolate and pour it into the pear.
Pears are not the only motif Paul cultivates. Past the dining and living rooms, in the front hall, are squirrels painted on walls and doors. The squirrel pattern was derived from the fabric hangings here. The bedroom beyond is decorated with fabric from the same celebrated designer, Fortuny.
I'm very fond of Fortuny fabrics. The bedspread is all Fortuny fabric. Mariano Fortuny was a very famous dressmaker in the early part of the century, and he later became a fabric manufacturer.
The light fixtures here are reproductions of Fortuny lights, and the silver-leafed ceiling is stenciled in a pattern to match the lights. Despite the magnificent details, Paul has had to make practical accommodations to the bedroom's small space.
Here in this armoire, I made my home office and entertainment center. You can see that it has a pull-out desk, and the computer and fax fit here. All of my CD storage is here. Television, DVD, the whole network. And it's even a quiet fax, so it doesn't wake me up at night.
The Queen Anne chest next to the armoire is decorated with Asian motifs, popular at that time. The West was also a source of artistic inspiration, even in the Mideast.
The fan I bought recently in Istanbul, showing a Western lady being entertained by a sultan.
There's more traditional Eastern art on a gilt bracket near the window. These ho-ho boy porcelain figurines depict happy Chinese deities.
They always greet me in the morning. My very first show house I did 15 years ago, I borrowed it from an antique dealer, and I fell in love with it, and I had to have it, and it was much too expensive. So the dealer let me put it on layaway plan, and several years later it was mine, and I've always treasured it the most. I've always felt when the earthquake hits, I'm going to grab this and run with it.
But the view from this room is pure West, the medieval-style Grace Cathedral, which only looks as if it's been there hundreds of years.
The tower was actually put on by a helicopter back in the 50s. It's all aluminum, so it's an illusion. There's the bells, perfect timing. Every hour on the hour we hear the bells. I always say I have a religious experience from my bed every morning.
Coming up, a unique spiral.
You'd expect someone considered by a national design publication as one of the top 50 designers of the millennium to have a pretty extraordinary home of his own. Well, not only is that true, but what's more impressive is that it's barely 900 square feet. We'll see what one of our country's top designers has done with very little space. Standing atop posh Nob Hill in the city by the bay, there's a 1924 building called the Chambord. It has elegant curves on the exterior and even more inside. It was these unusual lines that first hooked interior designer Paul Vincent Wiseman.
I walked in and I said, "Excuse me, I have to live here." It was an amazing thing. It's an amazing apartment. It has sun all day long, and east and south, so it's great. In design, you just know when proportions are right, light is right. There are special places in the world that just are magical, and this is one of them for me. I've never seen anything like it. Sometimes you see it in nature, sometimes you see it in architecture. It's just where everything comes together correctly.
But the unique architecture, including the oval-shaped living room, was just one of the draws for Paul. The dramatic views had something to do with it, too.
I'd lived in Paris back in the 70s, and I was very in love with French architecture, and looking out here at the Grace Cathedral, I felt like I was in Paris again. And this, the whole south view of the apartment is all about the cathedral. And the Coit Tower view is San Francisco. Very international apartment.
The apartment may only be 900 square feet, but the layout works beautifully. The entry leads through sumptuous draperies to the oval living room. This room is aglow with subtle, warm yellow walls.
It's actually painted one color, and then I had an artist with an airbrush come in and paint it with a deeper shade of the same color, so it looks like the sun had faded it. It's a technique I'd learned in Europe when I lived there, and it's very subtle. It almost looks like fabric at night.
Paul furnished the living room with antique pieces chosen with proportion, beauty, and function in mind.
This is a curved sofa based on a Schiaparelli, a famous designer in Paris in the 20s. She designed this originally. And this is an antique Italian settee, and you can get 3 people on this, but you can still see through it, so it doesn't feel heavy.
In the same vein is a pair of delicate 1810 chairs that once belonged to Napoleon's sister.
I love to live with old furniture. Antiques, if they break, you fix them. It's a small room, but you can seat 10 people comfortably here.
Beyond the living room is the dining room. It's compact too, but can comfortably seat 6 at dinner. On the walls is a rare collection of early 19th century engravings. They were done for a cabinet maker to show examples of furniture.
I paid, I think, $100 for them back 30 years ago. They were recently appraised for almost $40,000, which was amazing. It was before prints became art, and now everyone understands that prints are art in a lot of ways, and so they make a wonderful collection.
A pair of old mirrored doors is used to camouflage a window with an unattractive view.
I tease people and I say, oh, now this is where the ballroom is, but you know, it's so expensive to heat, we just don't use it. With the mirrors on the door, it makes the room seem more dimensional and more architectural. The chandelier is English, Regency 1810, 1820, and what makes it unusual is metal called toll. The brass on it has been gilded in a technique called fire gilding. And fire gilding is, they use mercury in the process. It's a beautiful color, and they can't achieve it any other way within this mercury process. I love candlelight. At night, I light a lot of candles and have the electric lights very low. Everybody looks better in candlelight, I think.
Off the other side of the foyer is the bedroom.
It's a very small room. We silver leaf the ceiling, and it gives a very elusive quality of light. And so during the day, it changes all the time. And we use the Fortuny light fixtures, the silk lanterns that Mario Fortuny, the famous dressmaker, designed back about 1910. And these are reproductions of them, exactly. And we did the stenciling around the room to match it. I can lay on my bed and look out my window, and all I see is the spire from the cathedral, which is lit at night. And often the moon is right with it. And it's extremely tranquil.
From sunlight to candlelight to moonlight, Paul has created an ideal sanctuary.
I like light. I'm a cheerful person, and light is very, very important to me. I love color, but I like the subtlety of color. I like how you can have many colors that are in relationship in a very subtle range. That makes it calm for me. So this is very much about subtle colors. It's eclectic. I have things that are thousands of years old in this apartment, things that are brand new. I really believe life is not one thing, it's many things, and the things we surround ourselves reflect that. I've lived in very few places, actually, and I'd be very hard to give this up. There's something very magical about it. I like small places that are manageable. You see yourself taking care of things by yourself if you have to. It's nice. I like that. I can see myself getting very old here.
Coming up, we're off to Massachusetts and an incredible apartment renovation in Boston's Back Bay.